Hi guys, my name's John, but my mates call me Cadete, and I've decided to start doing some videos about my trainer collection. I've been collecting trainers for, oh god, probably 10 years now, and one of the reasons I've decided to do the video is because a lot of people don't understand the bulk of my trainer collection. Usually, when they find out I have a lot of trainers, they say things like, "Are you a sneakerhead?" And they assume I own things like Jordans and American kind of basketball or running shoes. But really, my main inspiration behind my collection is trainers that were big in the football scene in England in the 80s, and that's what I focus on. So I thought, I might make some videos about that and inform people about, why I like these trainers and what's special about them. So in today's episode, being the first episode, I thought about what I should do, and I thought I'd start with something easy, um, which is to focus on some of the Pumas I have. Um, so basically, the first guys to really start wearing trainers and sneakers outside of actually playing sport were guys who later got called casuals, who went to football matches in England, and it started in the late 70s in Liverpool and Manchester, and then gradually this craze of wearing sports gear um, in general purpose on the weekend or for whatever, slowly spread around the country at first and then quickly spread. And then before you knew it, you had the whole country wearing sports gear. And something that a lot of Americans don't know, and even Australians, is that these guys were wearing sports gear before even hip hop. And you could actually see that in hip hop because the first guys wearing sneakers and hip hop were actually wearing tennis shoes, which was a big focus of the early casual movement. They weren't wearing basketball shoes. And the reason for this was because basketball really only took off in the mid to late 80s as a sport. It's still in America, not the number one sport, but it was only really with Magic Johnson and Larry Bird that guys started having their own shoes. And really, Michael Jordan was the one to really explode the whole sponsored athlete shoe industry that we know today. That is, really growing this whole sneaker movement, which is everywhere, and even in the last 5 years has just eclipsed what it was when it was still huge 5 years prior. So basically, yeah, as I said before, I'm going to talk about Puma. So early on, like in Liverpool and Manchester, the main shoes that people wore were Adidas. That was the main shoe available on the continent. They used to go over to Europe to watch their teams play in Europe, and basically a lot of these guys didn't have much money, and they would find a way, as either through theft or whatever, um, to get Adidas shoes. Another shoe they did used to get was Puma, and there were some shoes that were popular that were Puma, but when the movement in like 78 to about 1980 was really only in the north of England, it was basically all Adidas. One shoe that I'll talk to you about another time that was popular was the Puma Argentina, but really it wasn't until the movement moved around the whole England, and eventually it even really took off in Scotland, that guys started looking outside the box and away from Adidas, and one of the brands they looked at was Puma. So the first shoe I'll show you is this. Now this is your Gutierrez Vilas signature shoe. Now he was an Argentinian tennis player, and he won a few Grand Slams. Now this is in the orange colorway, which I chose myself. You can get it in a lot of different colours. I'm pretty sure he wore himself most of the time white, or sometimes red. There were certain tournaments where you weren't allowed to wear coloured sneakers. I chose orange because it was different. Now, these days on the market, they have two shoes. They have a shoe that actually says G Villas on it, which is what the original had, but it's actually a slimmed down version. because bulky shoes, until very recently, weren't that popular. This is what the actual shoe was back in the day, and these are branded, if you're looking for them, as you can see there, they're branded differently, and it says GV Special. Now, as you can see, they had a really thick sole, and at the front they had a lot of air holes, and they're really, really comfy, these ones. And you can see the grip there. They're pretty advanced, and one of the reasons why these took off was because they were the flagship shoe from Puma. And back then they were worth a lot. To be honest, if you did currency conversion from back then to now, they would be worth more now than just say Yeezys. If you went to a store and you lined up, not that I would, to buy Yeezys. And these became popular because they were the flagship for Puma. And alongside that, back then, except for Adidas, most of the shoe companies only made shoes. And so if a tennis player wore a certain pair of shoes, he usually wore a different type of brand of shorts and shirt and jacket. And the connection Puma had for most of the time was with Elise. And as you've seen, there's been a big comeback with Elise of late. And so the first guy that really wore Elise was Vilas. So he wore Elise and he wore Puma. And because guys really liked Elise and they really liked the ski jackets Elise made, because Elise were originally a ski company, these shoes became really big as well. And before that, he actually wore a Fila jacket and he wore Diodora shoes, and they were another two brands that had a connection. Anyway, these were the standard ones, and as I said, mine are orange. But back in the day, guys used to mainly have, I think it was white or blue or red. I haven't really seen any old photos of orange. These are re-released, so I only got these like a couple of years ago. They keep making these, which is great by Puma, because a lot of shoes they stopped making, and Puma keep making these because I think they just have a really loyal fan base from back in the day. Something a bit interesting is that I also have these, and once again they say the special on them because they're the same shoe, but these are the G Villa Comfort. Now, back in the 80s, if a tennis shoe said comfort, it meant straps. Now, growing up in the 90s, the last thing you wanted at school was shoes with straps. It was seen as really dated, and 80s. But in the 80s, it was seen as really cool. In fact, there was a period about 1980 where strap shoes were what you wanted to have, and everyone wanted them. And even minor brands that had shoes with straps, like Patrick, if you know the brand Patrick Sports, they brought out a shoe called the Ocean, and that had two straps, kind of like Stan Smith, and everyone was over that. And as you can see, this also has the dots, and the reason for that is instead of having the actual Puma sign and having dots, is because certain tennis tournaments, as I mentioned before, had rules on what you could wear and how flashy your shoes could be. And so if you weren't allowed stripes, like Adidas did with the Stan Smith, which probably a lot of you are familiar with, it's Adidas' second highest selling shoe. For most of its time, it was its first. Superstar just overtook it. Anyway, this was kind of the Stan Smith of Puma, and this is what he wore if he wasn't allowed to wear colours. What is interesting about the G Villas is that Boris Becker had a contract with Adidas where they basically just gave him free shoes. And prior to the season he won Wimbledon, as the youngest guy to ever win Wimbledon, his manager said to Adidas, "Can you give some money?" Because Boris was a real, gun in the junior scene, and Adidas said, "No, we can't be bothered." So he went to Puma, and Puma said, "Yeah, we'll give you some money." And he actually wore G Villas' range of shoes, and he wore his own Reynolds. It was called Reynolds Elise top. Wasn't specifically made for him, but he wore Elise as well when he won Wimbledon. And then after that, because he won Wimbledon, Puma decided to bring out its first tennis range of clothing, and so he wore Puma shoes, his own shoe, which I'll show you one day because I have a pair, and he wore his own Puma clothing, which was not the greatest range, to be honest. Now, the last shoe I'll show you that was also popular when the scene moved further down to London about 1981, 82, was this shoe, which is the California. Now, as you can see, it's pretty similar if you look at them. It's basically the same sole, but it's suede, and then at the front, and then it's polyester here. Now, this came in a variety of colours, Um, it came in white, came in light blue, and this was a really popular shoe amongst casuals at the football as well. It was basically Puma's trim trap, and it was another shoe that was highly priced, had a good sole. Basically, wearing this was the same as that in comfortability. So that was this was a really big one as well. So if you go on a lot of the Facebook pages or other things in social media where you hear about guys in the day talking about what shoes they wore, a lot of guys would say this was a shoe they wore, the California. That was a very popular shoe. Anyway, that's me for today. And so if you like what you heard, click subscribe and you can watch more of my videos. Leave comments if you want. And just with the comments, yes, I am aware that I'm way too young to have been around in the casual scene in the 80s. And I am aware I'm Australia and we don't even have a good football side and we don't even have a really good football league. But most of this stuff I've learnt by reading everything I could online or in books, and it's a hard thing to read about, so I might get some things wrong. So if you want to correct me, I'm happy to read it because I'm always happy to learn about something like this because the problem with the casual movement was it was really about clothes and there hasn't been that much literature written about it. So yes, I get it. I'm an Australian and I'm only 30 something. So yeah, if you want to tell me I got something wrong, please do. Anyway, till next time, have fun.